So I'm going to go ahead and settle us into our seats. And today we're going to start with a bit of singing. Yamanai nai nai nai, yanai nai nai nai, yanai nai 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 nai, yanai nai nai nai, yanai nai nai nai, yanai nai nai nai. Nine 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 nine, yeah nine 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 nine, yeah nine 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 nine, yeah nine 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 nine, yeah nine 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 nine, yeah nine 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 nine, yeah nine 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 nine. So this is a beautiful, beautiful nigun, a wordless melody that is one of my favorites. And I want to, for some people, it may sound familiar, but I'll explain a little bit about what this nigun is and why I chose it today. We are coming out of a period in the liturgical calendar, in our Jewish liturgical cycle, of having observed Tisha B'Av, the 9th of the month of Av. This was last week, about 5 days ago, in which we mark the Leider, the lowest point in our Jewish calendar, in which our tradition teaches us that the temples in Jerusalem were destroyed on this day. And then it became kind of a magnetic force for a collecting of all of the calamities that have befallen the Jewish people, kind of a collective day of mourning. And after we come out of that day of fasting, not eating and not drinking, and listening to the plaintive sounds of the chanting of the Book of Lamentations, we come into an ascent toward the High Holy Days. And this past Shabbat is known as Shabbat Nachamu, the Shabbat of comfort, because after we're in that very low place and we're beginning the ascent towards Rosh Hashanah, we're in need of comfort. And so Shabbat Nachamu for me is a sign of hope, not only of comfort. And I find this melody to be very, very hopeful and joyful. And it's called the Cane Street Nigun. So I'm going to ask Jet and Andrew if you can go ahead and share the source sheet. We'll kind of walk through it. We're going to be singing this again, but I kind of want to share with you a little bit about this nigun. So this is an old melody collected by Moshe Berogowski in the early 1900s in Ukraine. And it was later discovered in Kiev and subsequently adapted by Joey Weissenberg as the Cane Street Nigun. So I've included here on the source sheet, if you want to listen to it later, a beautiful musical version with instruments and Joey leading that. And then this beautiful quote that I found here. I want to thank Rabbi Jill Zimmerman, who brought this quote to my attention through a teaching that she did, in which Joey talked about the power of this particular nigun, this particular melody. Says, may the joyous energy of this nigun be a source of hope in a time of needless destruction and wanton violence now plaguing the region where it originated. It's hard for us to reconcile what we read in the newspapers about Ukraine with the joy and the hope that is in this melody that is a little over 100 years old, if not older, but it can be a source of hope for us as we send healing and hope to the people of Ukraine. And also in our microcosm of our Jewish calendar, as we also offer hope for ourselves internally as we begin the ascent from Tisha B'Av, the 9th of the month of Av, toward the Jewish New Year that is coming in September. So as we scroll down, I want to also lift up this beautiful teaching from Rabbi Nehemiah Poland, in which we have this visual that goes with the with the music. So he teaches that in a Hasidic nigun, a wordless melody, each note turns to the one behind it and says, "Thank you for being my Rabbi." Then the note turns to the note in front of it and says, "I bless you and give you permission for being even more beautiful than I." So it's interesting with this teaching, in terms of the directions and the words that Nehemiah Poland shows. I don't want us to get too tripped up if you're directionally challenged, as I am. But the basic idea is that the note in a nigun that has sounded right before the note that is to come, that note that preceded it is a Rabbi. That note is a teacher, and that note kind of lays the foundation for the note that comes after, to know how to make sound, how to resonate, where to go, what is my connection to the note that preceded me. And then after this note, make my own sound and join the tapestry of melody, right? Then I turn to the note that is to come and I say, "I bless you." Right? You're about to make sound, and I give you permission for being even more beautiful than I am, right? I'm relinquishing a sense of measuring and maybe even ownership over the beauty of my own sound. And so, of course, this is an analogy for how we might live our lives, not only in that we see ourselves connected, right? We, as a note ourselves, are connected to other notes around us, but also it's the relationship that we carry to what's on each side of us. One of gratitude. Thank you for paving the path. Thank you for being there before I did to guide me and to know, so that I could know how to fit in, or maybe I could know how to be different from what you just did. And then as I release my note into the world, I turn to the next note and say, now I give you permission, right, to come after me and supersede me, be even more beautiful than I am. With this teaching, I was also, I want to share something that's not on our page, a teaching from Cantor Ellen Dreskin, wonderful cantor and spiritual leader who also I met through the clergy leadership program at IJS. And she teaches the following. I did not include this particular quote on our sheet. She says that the active spiritual lives of notes and harmonies that are here for a second and only exist in relationship to the notes that sound simultaneously, as well as before and after, right? Our active spiritual lives, being the act of being present, is a flash, right? And then the next note comes. She notes that a musical note is nothing by itself, that it receives the strength and beauty and significance from the context, from the notes around it and the rests, right, where there's silence. And then, of course, it has to be played or expressed or sung in order to actually exist. I think that Cantor Dreskin's teaching on this is a beautiful explication or further drashing of Rabbi Nehemiah Poland's quote. And then this last quote before we enter into our practice together. Rabbi Nachman taught that for him, each little prayer, each act of kindness and charity, and every other good deed is a good point or a good musical note. Our task in this world is to seek out those good points or notes and gather them together one by one. This way we create a melody. Each person has his or her or their own unique good points and unique song. This is the music of life, bringing vitality and joy into the soul. So this is our opportunity to, and thank you, Andrew and Jet, we can take the source sheet down for now. This is our opportunity to allow this nigun into our internal lives, our internal spiritual lives, to think about how we might feel connected. And the meditation is to feel connected through our breath. So I invite you into this. We'll sing it one more time before we go into silence. I'll sing it again as we come out. Yamanai nai 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 yana na na na, yana na 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 na, yana na 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 na, yana na na na, yana na 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 na, yana na 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 na, yana na na na. Ya na 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 na. Ya na 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 na. Ya na 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 na. Ya na 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 na. So as we close our sit and we turn to the mourner's Kaddish, I'm going to ask Chet and Andrew to share that text, the traditional prayer that is said for those who are marking the loss of a loved one. I invite you to put the names of those loved ones in the chat if you'd like, and please feel free to unmute yourself. And we encourage those who are not saying Kaddish today to please stay if you can, to help provide a community for those who are in mourning. Yitgadal, Yitgadash, Shalom. I'll call you Shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'imru. Amen.
Amen.
So thank you to everyone for being a part of this sit today, this virtual space that has held so many of us through this pandemic and to this day. And I'll look in the chat. Thank you to people who are putting reflections there. So Harris is asking if I can share the quote from Cantor Dreskin, who he said, "It was generous to record herself singing Moda Ani, which I now use as an alarm to wake me up physically and metaphorically." So Harris, I'm going to just explain why I didn't share that quote on the source sheet. The people who have completed the clergy leadership program through IJS are part of a group known as Chavraya, which is the Aramaic term for the group of friends and group of study partners and spiritual supporters of each other in the Zohar, our great book of Jewish mysticism. And so we have a listserv in which people who are a part of Chavraya share thoughts, reflections, teachings. So she shared this in that listserv, and I did not have time to reach out to her to ask for permission to put it on the sheet because it's not published, and it was something that was a part of a private listserv. So if you want to listen back to the recording, and you can get her teaching that way. But I wanted to share that with you as to why I didn't put that. So Judith is asking me kind of on that side if I'm based at a synagogue or independent. I work independently as a rabbi. And so, anyone who wants to reach me, you can see my email address is at the bottom of the source sheet. So please feel free to be in touch with that. So I want to share some images that came up for me as I was meditating after teaching and singing this nigun. First of all, for people who are not yet familiar with the beautiful music of Joey Weissenberg, I encourage you to become more familiar with his neshama, his soul, and his music. And in this case, his reviving this nigun from the Ukraine that's at least over 100 years old. I am a musician also. And Paul is asking if we can repost the source sheet. So thank you to Andrew and Jet for that. That I'm a musician, and I began to become very aware of my fingers during the meditation. At one point, I moved them up onto the table, and I had my fingers, the pads of my fingers making contact with my desk here, and began to think about what's known as a pentatonic scale in music, penta meaning 5. And it's basically a very simple 5-note scale that goes up and comes down. And each of the fingers has a note. And I began to have this sensation of my fingers really being very aware of each one of these notes, and taking Nehemiah Poland's teaching about the fingers kind of being in relationship with each other as each finger articulates a note of the pentatonic scale. I didn't expect it to go in that direction, but it really did. And that kind of echoes what Harris also said, that he said during the sit, I realized that our relationships with others are like the relationship of the notes. And that's really the key to this teaching. I think the music is just an analogy for us, right? But what does it look like when we view our interactions with people in this way of, oh, thank you so much for what came before, and I wish you all the best as you come after me. I think our world would really be transformed if we could approach not only our relationships that way, but also every moment, because in a way, that's what we're doing through cultivating mindfulness, is we're expressing gratitude for the moment that has come before us, even a difficult moment that has been our Rabbi, that has taught us something. And then we're in a moment, and then we know that the next moment is an expression of hope, that it can be even more beautiful than this moment. There is the capacity for what is coming to supersede what we're experiencing in the moment, to be better. And that, to me, is really the essence of hope. And I feel that it is really reflected. Gail talks about it being a major modality in Western music, and having this mood of joy and hope. And she says it feels unusual compared to those I've heard in the past. Yeah, that some nigunim are very, the plural for nigun, these wordless melodies, are very mournful or minor or sorrowful. And this is just, it's really just kind of percolates pure joy for me. Great question about why this is called the Cane Street Nigun. So if you follow through, I don't remember exactly, but I did include the links. I believe it's a synagogue in New York. Someone will probably chime in with that, or a street in New York. I'm not positive, but that information is actually, if you follow through on those links on the source sheet, that information is all there. I think it came through safaria.org. You can find that. It's a wonderful source for online study sheets. That's also where Rabbi Jill Zimmerman had compiled some of these teachings, but I've linked through to that so that you can discover that. I'm sorry that I don't have that at my fingertips. Vel says, I thought of the humming of bees, which my dad always remarks, sounds like people talking, and how each thought that arises is like each bee humming to her community. Oh, wow. That's taking it to an incredible level. I'm going to read that again for people who don't have access to the chat. Belle says, I thought of the humming of bees, which my dad always remarks sounds like people talking, and how each thought that arises is like each bee humming to her community. Gosh, that's so beautiful. And I'm also thinking about how when thoughts arise either in ourselves or in others through the expression of words, how we have so many different reactions to those thoughts. Maybe like, I don't like that, I want it to go away, or how could you think that, or I want that, and how come I can't have that? And how I love this image of like the humming happening and thoughts arising. And it's like, oh, it's just kind of part of life, kind of part of the unfolding. Jeff says that the teaching about this music from Rabbi Nehemiah Poland is powerful. I think that's what he means, because sound waves never die, right? So there's kind of a crescendo or intensification of sound, and then there's a decay, right? But there's always something there to attune ourselves to. It just may be in a various different forms of being, right? Maybe just barely perceptible, right? Or in a state of decay, which is a big part of our lives too, right? That it's normal and it's good that we acknowledge that there are times of great, vibrant, loud sound. And then there's also times when the sound is decaying and turning into something else. Sarah is sharing that she's tuning in from, I'll read it verbatim here. She says, tuning in from my hammock today and listening to the croaks of a raven, along with more industrial sounds of trucks and other machinery, and thinking of it all as a kind of music. Yeah, Sarah, I was aware during my meditation, even though I have my windows closed in Sacramento, because it's already too hot to have them open. But there was a truck that pulled up outside my window, my apartment window, and there's always that feeling of a leader of like, should I mute myself and keep the quiet? I'm like, nope, this is the organic sound of life coming through my microphone, perhaps into our meditation space, right? It's all a music of some kind. Yes, thank you. Kane Street Synagogue in Boerum Hill, Brooklyn, New York. Thank you, Joan. I knew, even though I'm on the West Coast, I thought that was my recollection too. Ricky is raising a question in the chat. Isn't Nehemiah's quote also an allusion to parents and children, teachers and students? There is a bitter sweetness when one releases one's child to full independence and bless them to be better than oneself. Wow, Ricky, absolutely. Parents and children, teachers and students, right? We're all parents in one way or another, because we all shape human beings and individuals in our lives, right? So whether we're talking concretely here as a parent who's given birth to children, or a metaphorical parent, right? And we're all teachers. Absolutely. The web of relationships and how we impact each other is bittersweet, and it is fleeting, like the life of a note, right? Yeah, and Harris says we have our own parents to thank for how we live that, right? Everyone is someone's child, right? We all have parents, even though those relationships can be better or more difficult than others. We have been given the gift of life through our parents, right? The ability to sound our own note. Thank you to people who are noticing how the source sheet is helpful. You are welcome. It's really nice for people to have these source sheets to take to a Shabbat table, to share later in the week, to forward on to a friend, and to let other people know about the rich repository of teaching here at IJS, and how each day brings different nuggets. Like yesterday with Yael Shai was so beautiful. Each day brings something new and different. So thank you to Pam for lifting that up, and also for lifting up Andrew and Jet, with whom we couldn't do any of this without holding our tech space. Yeah, and Sarah's also saying gratitude for every note of each of us here today, right? So when we come to this sit and join this virtual community, it's like each one of us is a note also, right? And we can think about that as our eyes dance across the gallery screen on our pages, seeing people here. And Gil raises a question, what does a sound wave turn into? I thought it went away, but not at all sure. Okay. So Gil, this might test my knowledge of physics a bit. It's been a while, but basically sound waves have a cycles per second. And the higher the pitch of the sound, the more cycles per second. The lower the pitch, the fewer cycles per second. That shifts, and this is where I'm going to get a little bit on thin ice with my music physics here, but it's physics of sound. But as the sound decays, those cycles per second also shift and change until it becomes so faint that the sound can't hold pitch anymore. It can't be identified as a pitch on a scale, or in a musical key, as it were, if we're thinking in Western music. So I think no matter what the answer is in terms of the science, I think thinking about sound as having decay in it helps us listen more carefully, right? And to think about where are we, and also to know that nothing is permanent, right? Sound or anything else, our bodies or ever anything else. Ricky, great advice. If you're ever in a loud MRI machine, hum a nigun, right? They work with the clatter of magnetic waves. It's all sound and music, right? And it can calm us for those of us who don't relish the idea of being in an MRA. Yeah. And tonight, thank you, Marilyn, for lifting Marilee B, for lifting up. We didn't mention that tonight begins Tu B'Av, the Jewish Day of Love, Jewish version of Valentine's Day in the Jewish calendar. And Anna, thank you for lifting up Rabbi Jill Zimmerman's website. She is a wonderful teacher and commentator. Yes, indeed, she is. And thank you to Sandra. I am not on the IJS staff. I'm a volunteer here. I'm happy to host today to help out the IJS staff and to be here on a monthly basis. So, and just scanning to see. Shira has a beautiful reflection. My grandfather was with me today, and how he taught my mother things she taught me, especially a love of Judaism, right? Connecting back to our avot ve'imahot, our ancestors in our families, both our given families and our chosen families. Sound waves blend into each other like ripples in a pond. And Sarah's going to go back to her piano today. How nice. It's nice to be re-inspired again. So, and with this, again, one last thank you to Jet and to Andrew for holding our space, and to IJS for making it all possible. And everyone, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and evening. Shalom.